Every day, this coin passes through hands like nothing special. But in the world of collectors, a few versions of it are quietly getting attention. What if I told you that a coin worth just 25 cents could sometimes become something collectors actively search for, and most people spend it without a second thought? In the early years of the new millennium, Canada's coinage system entered a very interesting phase. Everyday pocket change was no longer just about transactions. It slowly became a canvas for storytelling, national identity, and commemorating cultural themes that mattered deeply to Canadians. Among those circulating pieces, the 2000 Canadian 25-cent coin stands out as one of the most widely recognized modern quarters, yet also one of the most misunderstood by casual collectors who often assume modern coins automatically carry high value. At first glance, the 2000 Canadian quarter looks completely ordinary. It has the familiar round shape, standard size, and metallic appearance that passes through millions of hands in everyday commerce. It features the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the front, a design that remained consistent on Canadian coinage for decades, symbolizing continuity and stability in the nation's currency system. On the reverse side, however, lies the real story of this coin series, where Canada introduced a rotating set of designs tied to the theme of the new millennium. The year 2000 was treated as a symbolic turning point. Rather than issuing a single standard design, the Royal Canadian Mint released multiple versions of the 25-cent coin throughout the year, each representing a different Canadian value or idea. Themes such as ingenuity, community, achievement, environment, and heritage were all engraved into separate quarter designs. This approach transformed a simple coin into a storytelling series, where each piece represented a different aspect of Canadian identity entering the 21st century. One of the most important things to understand about the 2000 Canadian quarter is that it was produced in extremely large quantities for circulation. Millions upon millions were minted and distributed across the country through banks, stores, and daily cash transactions. This high mintage is the main reason why most of these coins today still hold only their face value. In most cases, a regular circulated 2000 quarter is worth exactly 25 cents because there is no scarcity in the general market. However, the story becomes more interesting when collectors begin examining condition, variations, and mint types. Coins that were never circulated, those that remained in mint sets or special collector packaging, can carry a small premium. These coins often show sharper details, stronger shine, and no signs of wear. In numismatic terms, they are considered uncirculated or specimen quality pieces, and they can be slightly more valuable than regular pocket change, especially when preserved in complete sets. Even more attention is given to rare, minting variations and errors. In the world of coin collecting, errors are where ordinary currency sometimes transforms into highly desirable collectibles. A small mistake during production, such as misaligned dies, double strikes, or unusual plating issues, can make a coin stand out from millions of identical pieces. For the 2000 Canadian quarter series, collectors occasionally search for such anomalies because they can significantly increase interest and value depending on rarity and condition. There are also certain discussions among collectors about specific varieties or mint mark differences, although most standard 2000 quarters remain common. What truly determines value is not just the year or design, but how rare a specific version is compared to the massive circulation numbers. That is why even within the same year, two coins can have completely different collector interest levels depending on subtle characteristics. The design itself is another reason this coin series is still widely discussed today. Each reverse design, created in 2000, represents a symbolic idea tied to Canada's national identity at the time. For example, themes like community and achievement reflect social values, while others highlight creativity, health, and cultural heritage. These designs were meant to connect citizens with shared ideals, making the coin series more meaningful than standard currency issues. Over time, as people started saving these coins in rolls, albums, and personal collections, interest in them grew, not necessarily because they are rare, but because they represent a complete themed series from a significant historical moment. Many collectors enjoy assembling full sets from the year 2000, which adds a layer of hobby value beyond simple monetary worth. Despite occasional online claims suggesting extremely high values, it is important to separate typical market reality from exaggerated figures. Most circulated 2000 Canadian 25-cent coins remain at face value. Even uncirculated examples usually sell in the low range, depending on condition and packaging. Only rare error coins or exceptional certified specimens reach higher levels, and those cases are uncommon rather than standard. What makes this coin interesting is not that it is rare in a financial sense, but that it represents a moment when Canada experimented with turning everyday money into a narrative collection. Instead of a single static design, the 2000 quarter series reflects a country expressing its identity through multiple symbols in a single year. Even today, these coins continue to appear in circulation, meaning many people still encounter them without realizing they are part of a broader collectible series. Some may sit unnoticed in drawers or jars, while others continue to circulate as normal currency. Their story is still active, not frozen in history. And that is why collectors remain interested. Not because every coin is valuable in dollars, but because each one is a small piece of a larger national story that unfolded at the turn of the millennium, capturing the ideas, values, and imagination of Canada at that moment in time. The 2004 Canada 25-cent coin, quarter, is one of those modern Canadian coins that looks ordinary in your pocket, but actually has a clear story when you look closely. In 2004, Canada was already deep into its series of circulating commemorative quarters, where different designs were issued around themes and special national symbols. Unlike older coins that stayed the same for decades, these modern quarters changed designs frequently, which made people start paying more attention to what was in their change. The standard 2004 Canadian quarter features the familiar caribou design on the reverse, originally created by Emmanuel Hahn, one of Canada's most iconic coin designers. The obverse shows Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Susanna Blunt, which was the standard portrait used on Canadian coins during this period. Even though the design feels simple, it represents Canada's wildlife heritage and long-standing tradition of using the caribou as a national symbol of strength and wilderness. This coin was not rare at all. In fact, it was produced in extremely large numbers, around hundreds of millions of coins minted for circulation. That means almost everyone in Canada during that time period handled this coin at some point without even noticing it was anything special. It passed through vending machines, stores, gas stations, and pockets every single day, becoming one of the most common quarters in circulation. Because of this huge mintage, the value of a regular 2004 Canadian 25-cent coin is still basically face value. In most cases, it is worth exactly 25 cents, and even in slightly better condition, it usually only goes up to a small premium for collectors. It is not a rare date, and it is not a key year in Canadian coin collecting. However, what makes this coin interesting for collectors is not its rarity, but its condition and variations. Coins that were never circulated, meaning they stayed in mint rolls or official sets, can have a cleaner shine, sharper details, and no wear. These uncirculated versions may sell for slightly more, especially when kept in full sets. There are also collector discussions about minor variations and special releases connected to 2004 commemorative themes, but even those remain relatively common compared to truly rare Canadian errors or limited mint issues. Some people search for error coins such as missed strikes, off-center designs, or unusual plating issues, because those are the only situations where a 2004 quarter could become significantly more valuable. A lot of confusion online comes from viral claims that modern coins like this might be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. In reality, those claims usually mix up normal circulation coins with rare grading cases or completely different special issues. The truth is much simpler. A standard 2004 Canadian quarter is still one of the most common coins you can find. What makes it still interesting, though, is its place in the timeline of Canadian coinage. It represents a period when Canada was heavily using circulating commemorative and themed designs, and it shows how everyday money can reflect national identity, wildlife symbolism, and design continuity all at once. So if you find a 2004 Canada 25-cent coin in your change, you are not looking at a rare treasure, but you're holding a small piece of Canadian circulation history that millions of people once used daily without thinking twice about it. So at the end of the day, the 2004 Canada 25-cent coin is not about shocking value or hidden fortune. It's about everyday history that passed through millions of hands without anyone stopping to notice. It represents a time when Canadian coinage was simple, widely circulated, and deeply connected to national identity through symbols like the caribou. Most of these coins will always remain common, staying close to their face value. But that doesn't make them meaningless. In fact, that's what makes them interesting, because they remind us that not every valuable thing is measured in money. Sometimes value is in the story, the era it came from, and the people who unknowingly carried it through their daily lives. So before you dismiss an old coin as just pocket change, take a closer look. Not every coin will change your life, but every coin has a story. And sometimes that story is worth more than you expect. In the early 2000s, something interesting began to shift in the world of Canadian coin collecting. What used to be simple pocket change started transforming into miniature historical records, carrying stories of national pride, sports legacy, and moments that define generations. Among those coins, one particular release from 2009 quietly entered circulation, and at first glance, it looked just like another 25-cent piece. But for those who pay attention to details, especially collectors who study mint variations and limited commemorative issues, this coin would eventually become something far more intriguing than ordinary change. It begins in a time when hockey in Canada was not just a sport, but a cultural heartbeat. From frozen ponds in small towns to massive stadiums filled with roaring crowds, hockey represented identity, unity, and passion. The Royal Canadian Mint understood this deeply. That is why in 2009, a special commemorative quarter was issued to celebrate men's hockey, a design meant not just to honor the sport, but to reflect the emotion of a nation that breathes ice and competition. At first glance, the coin appears familiar in size and structure. A standard 25-cent Canadian quarter, composed of a nickel-plated steel core, carrying the familiar weight and feel that passes through countless hands every day. But when you look closer, the story begins to unfold on its surface. The design captures the energy of men's hockey in motion, a frozen moment of athletic intensity that somehow feels alive even though it is struck in metal. The players are not just figures. They represent decades of dedication, rivalry, and national pride that stretch far beyond the rink. This particular design was not randomly chosen. The Royal Canadian Mint often collaborates with artists and engravers who specialize in translating motion into static imagery. Every line, every curve, and every shadow on the coin is carefully placed to reflect speed and impact. In the case of the 2009 men's hockey 25-cent piece, the focus was on capturing the raw intensity of gameplay. Skates cutting through ice, sticks in motion, bodies leaning into the game with determination that every Canadian hockey fan instantly recognizes. But what makes this coin especially interesting to collectors is not just its design. It is the context in which it was released. 2009 was not just another year for Canadian coinage. The Royal Canadian Mint had already been experimenting with commemorative quarters for several years, and each release added another layer of collectability. Some were widely circulated, while others were produced in more limited quantities or specific mint sets. This created natural variation in rarity, which is one of the key factors that drives long-term value in numismatics. When the hockey quarter entered circulation, most people treated it like any other coin. It passed through vending machines, cash registers, wallets, and coin jars without much attention. Very few people stopped to examine it closely. That is often how modern numismatic treasures begin their journey, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to recognize their potential long after their release. Over time, however, collectors began noticing subtle differences in certain batches. Some coins appear to have sharper detailing, while others had minor variations in finish, depending on whether they came from circulation sets, uncirculated rolls, or special mint packaging. These variations are where the world of serious coin collecting becomes fascinating. What looks identical to the average can represent entirely different production runs, each with its own scarcity profile. The men's hockey design itself carries symbolic weight. Hockey in Canada is more than entertainment. It is tradition passed from one generation to the next. Fathers teach sons, mothers cheer from icy stands, communities gather around televised finals, and entire cities shift their mood based on the outcome of a single game. The coin attempts to compress all of that cultural energy into a small circular frame of metal. That is what makes commemorative coins different from regular currency. They're not just economic instruments, but storytelling devices. As the years passed, interest in Canadian commemorative quarters grew steadily. Online marketplaces, collector forums, and auction discussions began highlighting specific years and designs that were gaining attention. The 2009 hockey quarter occasionally appeared in these conversations, especially when collectors discussed condition-based value increases. Coins in pristine, uncirculated condition always attract higher interest, and this particular issue was no exception. One of the most important factors in determining the value of any coin is its grade. A coin that has never been circulated, showing no scratches, no wear, and retaining full mint luster can be significantly more valuable than one that has been used in everyday transactions. In some cases, the difference between a circulated coin and a flawless specimen can be dramatic, transforming something worth 25 cents into something that collectors might compete over. In addition to condition, rarity plays a crucial role. While the 2009 men's hockey quarter was not initially intended to be rare, certain versions became harder to find over time. Collector demand also plays its own role in shaping value. When interest rises faster than supply, prices begin to shift in ways that often surprise people who are not part of the numismatic world. Stories began circulating among collectors about exceptional examples of this coin appearing in high-end auctions and private sales. Some reports suggested that perfectly preserved versions, especially those with unusual mint characteristics or error variations, were being evaluated at significantly higher prices than face value. In rare cases discussed within collector communities, speculative valuations reached astonishing figures, sometimes even being mentioned in the context of tens of thousands of dollars, depending on condition, rarity classification, and buyer demand. It is important to understand how coin valuation works in this world. Unlike regular products, coins do not have fixed prices. Their worth is determined by a combination of scarcity, historical significance, physical condition, and collector enthusiasm. This means that two coins from the same year and design can have completely different market values, depending on subtle differences that only trained eyes can detect. The 2009 men's hockey quarter sits in an interesting position within this system. It is not the rarest Canadian coin ever produced, yet it holds a strong thematic appeal because of hockey's deep national importance. That emotional connection often elevates demand beyond pure numerical rarity. Collectors are not always driven by logic alone. Sometimes they are driven by meaning, nostalgia, and personal connection to the subject depicted on the coin. As interest grew, so did the mythology around certain examples of the coin. Some collectors began claiming that specific high-grade specimens had been valued at extremely high figures in niche auction environments, particularly when paired with certified grading and provenance. In these discussions, numbers like $80,000 were occasionally mentioned, typically in reference to exceptional cases or speculative market peaks rather than standard circulation pieces. This is where excitement often blends with exaggeration in the collector world, making it essential to separate average examples from extraordinary ones. Still, what cannot be denied is the steady rise in attention toward modern commemorative coins like this one. The Royal Canadian Mint's approach to combining national identity with circulating currency created a generation of coins that are still being studied, collected, and traded today. Each coin becomes a small artifact of cultural memory, and the hockey quarter is no exception. As we continue deeper into the story of this coin, it becomes clear that its significance is not only about metal and minting. It is about how everyday objects can quietly transform into collectible history. It is about how something designed for ordinary use can, under the right circumstances, become something far more valuable than anyone initially expected. And the most interesting part is that many of these coins are still out there, possibly sitting in old jars, forgotten drawers, or mixed in a loose change, waiting for someone to take a closer look and realize that even the smallest piece of currency can carry a much bigger story than its face value suggests. In the next part, we will go deeper into the minting process behind this coin, the exact factors that created its collectible appeal, the known variations that collectors search for today, and how condition grading can completely change its standing in the market, sometimes turning an ordinary quarter into a highly sought-after collectible with surprising demand among serious numismatists.